I just told Jeremy, I said, look, if you don't have time for this, why don't you just opt out for now until you can figure out how you can, you know, he has to learn, and I'm not going to force it. He has to learn how to, you know, make sure you prioritize what's important. And if you're not going to work on if you're caught to doing all the tasks, you never grow.
Yeah. And you see why I said you know, whoever is involved, I want to be involved from the beginning because everything, as we move on, some of the stuff that we're doing, we've done on the first meeting that we'll do a little today, like some of the stuff that feels like personal development, it's really important because it's about how you're then showing up to actually do the stuff that you need to do. And if you don't have a context and you don't understand, right, like what it is, what's expected, or when somebody's like, okay, where are you on the ladder? And they look at you like, you know, you're speaking a foreign language, then all of a sudden, you know, like we're not on the same page. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's why. So let's start with 2 words. Jeremy.
All right. I'm a little distracted and emotional.
Okay, emotional means that you're experiencing emotions, which most of us do. So what emotion?
A little sad.
Okay.
What the hell happened?
We'll get to it.
It's only 2 words.
We'll get to it.
Now I'm curious.
And excited.
Okay. Thank you.
Curious. You know, I'm happy, and I don't know, relief and happy.
Okay.
Somehow.
Excited and anxious.
Okay. Kais?
I would say happier and looking forward.
Great. Oh, it's so, what a difference, right? Like now we hear you as you're in our room. This is great.
Okay.
So, Jeremy, you want to talk a little bit about what
It's your
Just
girlfriend.
need 2 words.
Well, and this is a great example of why we do these check-ins, because you said something and then immediately Connor was, well, now I'm curious, right? Or now I'm concerned, or right? So that in some ways, the thing is, if you don't get the chance to say it, right? Like whatever it is that's outside, that it's, then if you show up differently here, then we make up all kinds of stories about why you're not really here, or you don't really care, or whatever, right? But if you tell us, like, well, here's the thing that happened, and I'm feeling vulnerable or sad, or right, then we can say, how can we support you, and can we put it aside for now? And does that make sense?
It does. I mean, my girlfriend are just going through some stuff.
Okay, so you got in an argument with your girlfriend?
Not an argument.
He doesn't want to say, look at it, it's just, it's filled, and he's like, oh, God.
I don't know. I think we're just taking a break, I guess.
Uh-huh. So it's bigger than just an argument.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
awesome.
good.
Yeah, so again, you know, we tend to think like, oh, well, we don't need to bring our personal stuff into, but right, like it might impact your energy a little bit.
Definitely,
and so us kind of knowing, your team knowing, so they can support you might be important, right? If they generally speaking are giving you shit, they might have a little bit more empathy and compassion about how they're relating to you, because now we know that.
Today I'm a lot better than I was the day before, and better than the day before that.
And they will keep getting better.
Yeah. I'm not really sure where we're at or what the deal is. So.
Okay. What kind of support might be helpful for you, whether in here or out of here?
I don't know. Just honestly kind of putting my head down and getting stuff done has been kind of getting my mind off of it. That's been the biggest thing, or that seems to be helpful.
Snowboarding
too, yeah.
That would be helpful.
I will. I'm gonna go up. I got way too much stuff to do to payback and whatnot, so.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Tyler? Anxious?
It was actually anxious more in like a good way.
Anticipatory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just,
Like anxious for what the future in terms of 2019.
okay. So just wanted to check in.
Yeah.
2 words.
Busy.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna say present.
Okay.
Kind of, except Dave can't log on.
Oh, Dave can't log on.
How come?
I don't know. He's trying that link, but it says he needs a ID or something.
Oh, that's not good. Did he just try recently?
So
or-
try again. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He said the number in the link is for the last meeting.
So, so the number.
'Cause I forwarded him that email to you that you sent. You know.
Mhm, yeah. Kais,
Yes.
can you do me a favor and can you scroll over the top of your screen and it's gonna show a little number that, there's a number that shows
Yeah.
up at the top of your screen.
Yes.
Okay, can you read that number to me and Danielle, can you write it down?
Yeah. 955 933 3578.
Great, thank you. So
Yeah.
just tell him to basically insert that number instead of whatever other number he has, because if Kai's got in without a
Yeah.
thing, then he should be able to. So, cool, thank you. Thank you. So same ground rules as we had previous, and why is it that some of those are not showing up on the screen? That is really interesting. So listen to understand and reflect, and then assume ownership for your own learning was the things that are for some reason not showing up on there, even though they're showing up on my slide.
Oh, by the way, real quick, just a bit of news.
Oh, thank you.
Julia
That worked out.
passed her driver's
I
license.
know. I found out.
She's got a driver's license.
Hallelujah. Better stay off the roads.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking driving down here, I was like, she's probably taking the test somewhere
Yeah.
in the neighborhood.
Celebration.
Yeah.
Yeah, celebration is right.
Dave, welcome. We had just finished a little bit with ground rules, and so I'm just going to come back to you and do a 2-word check-in. Can you hear us?
Hello, hello.
Oh, there you are. Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
So I was just asking for a 2-word check-in from you.
How about calm and grateful? If that.
Great. Fabulous.
See that?
Thank you.
Nice.
You know why? You got that couch upstairs.
Because yeah,
You got
it's
that.
just so
I got a Florida sunset that I've been missing.
That's beautiful.
I thought it was because you got your couch upstairs.
Oh. How are you doing? Did your hand heal up, Connor?
It's getting there.
He was moving the couch.
Oh, okay. So that's where the gratitude comes from, huh?
I'm looking about 4 holes in the wall.
Oh, only. Good deal. Okay, so I want us to kind of get started. It's been very recent since I saw you last, so are there any celebrations that you might want to share with me or with the team?
Rebuild.
Yeah. Yeah, I was running, I thought the meeting was at 3:45 or 5:45 here, and then I saw it was moved to 5:30, and I was kind of rushed to get back to the hotel, but I kind of concentrated on breathing and was able to stay pretty relaxed when usually if I'm going to be late for something, I tend to get pretty anxious.
Awesome.
So I guess that's a celebration for me.
Yes, that's pretty cool.
Very nice.
That's awesome. Awesome. Anybody else? So, actually, Dave, you sharing that?
Jeremy, put a smile on it. Jeremy gave us some bad news. Did you hear about it?
Not maybe a little bit, but not really. I caught the tail end. So.
So what you shared, Dave, actually reminded me that I want to share I don't normally share this at this time, but I think that it's probably helpful. I actually was talking to Danielle about this, and it's probably going to be good for all of you, given that you're going to be traveling and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I mentioned last time that one of the pieces that usually get us hung up the most, where we have the biggest problems, it's usually during transitions, right? Because that's when, like, we're caught off guard, we feel more stressed. We tend to drag stuff from one thing onto the next and then to the next, okay? So one really easy and quick strategy to do is take 1 or 2 minutes, doesn't take very long, and just kind of sit and close your eyes and do some like deep breathing where you're breathing out of your belly and not out of your chest. And as you inhale, you go, let. As you exhale, you say go. Let. Go. And you just repeat that. Let. Go. And the idea is that you really are focusing on releasing and letting go any energy that you have been feeling that from the thing that you were doing right before, so that you can kind of start with a clean slate at the new thing. Okay, and so one of the things that I think what did you say, Danielle, that your friend or your yoga teacher said that?
Oh, he used to always say, when you think you don't have time for yoga, that's when you need to show up.
Yeah. So why I'm asking you to say this is because often when we feel most stressed, we say we don't have time for X, Y, and Z. And if you were to actually be tracking the amount of time that you spend on your phone and notice how many hours you're spending on your phone, and if it's more than 1 hour, then you certainly have time to do whatever, whether it's exercise or cooking or yoga, or sit for a minute or two and breathe and release whatever's happening so that you can get present for the next thing. I often tend to, when I feel the most stressed, I make time to do art, because art is one of those things that really gets me out of my rational brain and strategy brain and into kind of my more creative self that allows me to really relax. And so when I'm feeling the worst, that's when I kind of force myself to do more art, and then I can switch back to doing work. So just wanted to kind of give you just one simple strategy that you can use in all kinds of situations, and just kind of notice how that transitions go. So nice job, Dave, because that was inspired by you.
Thanks.
So you all got a nice little goal sheet. Nice job. I printed it for you. I didn't know if you were stuck.
I sent you Brent's too, but
yeah, but he wasn't gonna be.
Were we supposed to email these to you?
No, it's
I
for you.
wasn't sure, so I just emailed.
But if you email it to me, actually, it would be great, because then I actually get to see it. So it would help me if you do. So you weren't supposed to, but if you do, it would help me, just because then I'll know what you're working on. Okay, so we'll talk about these in a minute. I want to kind of go through like what will help you be effective at setting goals. So you probably have heard all kinds of different types of goals, and this would be a different acronym. I learned SMART goals, and then over time I felt like they really they didn't work as effectively. So I created an acronym that's just called DREAM. So first, they need to be dream driven. And why I believe that goals need to have some element of dream or dream driven is partly kind of going back to the conversation that we had between Jeremy and Mike last time. Whenever you don't have a good connection to meaning and purpose and vision, it makes whatever you're doing really challenging to do. when you connect it to something that is meaningful, that is tying into a dream or something that actually speaks to you more, then it's much, much easier to be committed to. Secondly, they need to be realistic. So while they need to be inspired and driven by a dream, they also need to be realistic and achievable in some way. They need to excite you. So they need to bring up some kind of energy. You need to feel some kind of energy charge about it, right? So, and I'm just gonna pick money because it's an easy goal. If you guys were to pick, like, how much money do you want your company to make, right? You don't wanna pick a number that is like, yeah, meh, right? Because it's not gonna be that exciting, right? When you pick a number, it needs to feel a little bit like, oh, right? So it's gonna feel a little scary because it's gonna be a stretch and you're gonna feel a charge. Does that make sense? And so that's what I mean by having a piece of.
But it needs to stay realistic.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
There's got to be a stretch to it, though.
Yeah, there needs to be a stretch to it. It needs to be attainable, right? So again, it's kind of like we are now straddling both sides of it, right? You need to be stretched by it because that's part of what's going to create the excitement and the motivation. But it also needs to be attainable, right? So if you set up a step that is so far, and then you're just going to go and, you know, hit the wall and then fall down, then that's not going to be super helpful, right? So in some ways, one of my coaches used to say, have a meter of like whether the goal is going to be a rust or a bust. So rust meaning it's like too easy and you're just going to get bored and, you know, or so high up there that you're just, you know, not going to make it. So it needs to be somewhere in between. And then the last one is that it needs to be method friendly, meaning that you need to be able to measure it in some way or shape. Okay, and it could be like the more specific the measure, the better. Okay, and at the same time, I don't want you to get caught up on creating measures that don't mean something to you, right? So it could be as simple as I am having, if in general I have about 5 arguments a week, then I would like to decrease to having 0 to 2, right? So that could be, it could be that simple. And then the last one, again, is like specific, so which I kind of talked about. So as you think about, you know, what it is that you want to create, some of them are going to be individual goals for you, and some of them are going to be collective goals that you create as a company, right? The guide that I gave you was meant for you to create your own goals. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and if you have questions, please interrupt me. I want to talk a little bit about like some components that tend to create both higher achievement and higher adherence to goals. So while these may not be necessarily things that you put in as a sub-segment of your goals, you want to be thinking about this as being a part of that. Does that make sense? So if it actually creates a clear vision or an identity. So the more that the goal is moving you to create a different identity, the more likely it is that you are going to stick to it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of health goals because it's a little easier in that regard. So if you choose to start a new exercise plan or you choose to start a new eating habit, if you say, I'm on a diet, what does that imply?
Change, something different from.
Okay, what else?
That you're heavier than you want to be.
Not necessarily, but most of the time diets imply a temporary condition. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I'm going to do this diet, and at some point this diet's going to end, and then I'm just going to go back to being whatever it is that I normally do, right? Versus when you say, I am making a commitment to being healthier and or being fitter or being, now you are claiming a new identity, right? And so you might say, as a really healthy person, I am choosing to change my eating habits. And so you might say, I just don't. So I asked you, and this was, I swear it wasn't a test, but it's a really great segue. When you first came in, I said, you guys drink juice? Mike said, I don't. Did you drink juice before you started on your current?
No, I don't really.
Okay, good.
To drink tea.
Which is good. So I asked partly because I know that you just started something new, right? And it involves not eating sugar, which is
right.
Right?
Well, I could have fruit.
Okay. So, however, like your answer would be actually congruent with this example, right? It wasn't, you weren't saying like, no, I can't have it, right? Which would be more typical answer of somebody that might be on a diet, right? But you just said, no, I don't drink it, right? That is just an identity that you are claiming. Does that make sense? And so the more that you align to claim an identity that is associated with whatever change that you're trying to make, the more likely it is that you're going to stick to that change. Does that make sense? Okay, secondly is that it also needs to have some intrinsic value. So a lot of times, and this is kind of a really great example of, probably temperamentally the difference between Danielle and Meg, right? Like Danielle, you love the feeling of accomplishing things and finishing things. And this actually speaks a little bit to the process of what intrinsic value is going to bring for you to do this thing, right? In the process of doing it, not just in accomplishing it, right? How is it going to enhance your life? How is it going to bring value to your life? So, and it could be something like, let's just say that one of your goals is to be more efficient at work, okay? And this might seem like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but your goal is to be more efficient at work. And the reason for that is because when you're more efficient, you're going to be less stressed, and it's going to actually give you more free time for you to pursue things that you want to do, or be with your family more, or do funner stuff. Does that make sense? And so when you think about it from that perspective, then you being committed to being efficient might increase that, because now you are tying it to giving greater value than just feeling efficient for the sake of being it. Okay? This is going to speak to probably Brent and Tyler and Connor a little bit more in terms of will this have some kind of utilitarian value? Will achieving this goal lead to something useful? Is it going to give you more money? Is it going to give me better skills? Is it going to, what is a payoff that this achieving this goal is going to give me, right? And having that in mind is often really helpful. What's the opportunity cost? Can I pursue this goal without losing out in other things that I feel important? This is an important thing, and this is a reason why I mentioned the piece about phones. So how many of you have phone trackers? And what I mean by phone trackers is like a tracking app that tracks how much time you spend on your phone.
Apple does it. That's what, taking credit for
that. So it's helpful information, right? Because when you are using your work mostly for work, then you will kind of get a sense of how much time you normally do that, versus when you're like just wasting time, like scrolling through Facebook or,
Well, it's funny because Apple started doing that, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, and it just pops up on your phone. Your screen time was this amount of time, and that's this amount less or more than last week or whatever. And whenever I get it and it's less, I feel really good, but I'm not making like a conscious effort to reduce it.
Right.
But it gives you a good feeling when you see that it was less.
Does it send you like a note weekly
Just
or
pops up
daily?
on
Yeah, it just
like
pops up.
Sunday.
It
Tell you like which apps or
Does
just,
it say?
Well,
does
you
it
can
say-
then click into it and it'll break down like
yeah, I remember.
like whether it was social media or whether it was
Just phone calls.
text messages or whatever it was.
And screen time, so I don't think phone calls count.
Yeah. Does it say if like does it send you a notification if you did more or anything like that?
It'll just basically give you a weekly report.
It
Ah,
It'll tell you
it does a
like-
weekly, daily, like a daily average
Okay. Okay.
for the week.
So I haven't updated my phone. I hit updates, so
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten it.
because you probably haven't updated your phone, which would be probably because I haven't done it yet. But I have a tracking app, and so this app allows you to set the time, right? And then if I go over it, it starts giving me notifications, and if I go really over it, it sends me like angry faces, and then if I really go over it, it's like starts like buzzing, like you're really over your time, like like come on, what are you doing? So why I'm mentioning this is because often it's easy to spend a ton of time on our phones, right? Like it's so easy to just kind of get sucked into that thing. And if you're noticing that, and why I'm bringing it up is that being able to look at what you want to create or what kind of new habit or new thing that you want to work on, one of the best, most used excuses that we have is, I have no time. I don't have time. I'm too busy, right? But if you really look at how much time you're spending on your phone, you probably will realize that we have plenty of time. And it's really about making time for the things that matter. Yet, you might be able to actually create something where you do something in combination with something else, right? So instead of losing out, you're increasing. I'm going to give you an example. Let's just say that you want to work out on a stationary bike, but you also want to read more, right? And so potentially, you could potentially read while you are on your stationary bike.
That's why I'm the neighborhood walker and reader.
Right?
Not with the neighborhood. If I'm just with Laker, yeah.
So I mean, so it's important to think about what are things that make sense to pair together and what are things that we really need to be really present in the moment for. I had a client that got a mood lamp, and I said, okay, you need to spend at least 20 to 30 minutes in front of the mood lamp for that mood lamp to actually be effective. So we need to pair it to something that you're already doing, because my guess is that unless we do that, you won't use it.
What's a
Right.
good one?
So there's these little lamps that basically mimic the vitamin D creation that you get from spending in the sun. So lots of people on the winter, they tend to get a little bit more depressed and a little bit more down because there's less sun, we're not spending time outside, and so our vitamin D levels drop, and so our mood drops. And so mood lamps are meant to like enhance your mood and help you feel better, but you have to sit in front of it for at least 20 to 30 minutes a day. So I said, set it up so that you are sitting in front of it while you're putting on your makeup. So now you are pairing it to something that's not taking away, right? But it's contributing. So depending on the goal that you want to set, some things will be easier and harder. And then the delay time, is it going to have quick results, or is it going to take a longer time to see? Often, we tend to stick to things that we start seeing results faster, right? And we tend to get discouraged with things that take a little longer. And so being able to set realistic expectations when you're creating a goal, it's important. So I'm going to say this, especially any of you are setting any goals in relationship to like mood regulation or being higher up on the accountability scale or recognizing patterns, those types of things, because they're abstract, take a little longer. And so you just need to give yourself a little bit of that leeway and recognize that, okay, it's just going to take a little bit longer for me to be practicing these things. Okay? Personal control. So you want to feel like the goal needs to be set as something that you can personally make happen. So I see this being a mistake with many of the athletes that I work with, because a lot of times the goals that they set is, I'm going to win this tournament, or I'm going to win this competition, or I'm going to, right? And so is that fully in their control?
If it's a team sport now.
Even if it's an individual sport.
Someone else can work harder
Yeah,
and be better.
Because there's all kinds of things that might influence, right? So can they say, I am going to make sure that I am rebounding and I'm like, my mindset is not getting the best of me? Yes. Can they say, I'm gonna make sure that I'm at my best cardiovascular shape and my best physical shape? Yes. Can I make sure, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Can they set like specific performance goals? Like, you know, like you guys that play tennis, like give me some.
Less than 3 times 30 minutes.
Right. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can certainly do that. And if you do those things, the likelihood of you winning increases, right? But there's no guarantee. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you set goals in a way that are totally achievable by you, even if you lose a match, right? If you did all of those things, you can still walk away feeling very good and very proud of the work that you've done. If the only way that you've set the goal that you measure yourself against is, I won or I lost, and then you did all kinds of good things, but then you lost, now you're like beating yourself up in all kinds of ways and really struggling to find the motivation to get back into the court or, you know, the gym to practice and do what you need to do the next.
So how do you handle something that is something that you really want to have happen, but maybe it isn't entirely in your control?
So-
It's still a goal, or
Yeah,
it's still
yeah.
something you're
So
trying to achieve.
So you would want to set that outcome goal, like saying, you know, I want to win the match, I want to make $10 gajillion, I want to, right? And then realizing, okay, and that's not totally under my control. So what are all the intermediate goals that I need to be setting, that I need to be looking and measuring, and because those are the things that are going to be under my control, right? Am I always answering the phone? Am I, you know, optimistic? Am I following up with my customers? Am I seeking new contracts? Am I, right? So those are probably the things that are more under your control, and making sure that then you're doing those things, right? Most likely will lead to that. Okay. Social support. This is a big one. So have you guys ever heard that story of the crabs?
Story of the what?
Crabs.
No.
So there's something really particular that crabs, when you put crabs in a boiling pot, if one crab starts trying to get out of the pot, the crabs that are in the pot will reach out and pull the crab back down. Okay? People are a lot like this, which is part of the reason why I often like to work in teams. Because when we are trying to achieve something, when we are trying to make some kind of change, we are going to be 100 times more effective if we have a team of people that are on the same page, trying to make the same changes, and they're all on the same page supporting each other, than having one person trying to make the change and everybody else trying to
Pull you in the pot.
pull you in the pot. Okay, so an example of this might be like your families, and I know that. Okay, but as a family, most families have, each person has a role. Okay, so one person is a maybe like a pot stirrer, and another person is a conflict avoider, and another person is a mediator, and another person is a, right? So in our families, most of us have different roles that we play when we come together as a family. And when you leave your family, you might be a totally different person, and then you come with your family, and then all of a sudden you find yourself falling into this role. Okay, can you relate to this? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's the same thing, right? So being able to be aware of how you are contributing to something either going well or not within a team, it's helpful when we start trying to make goals to create change, because then we need to be willing to let go of those comfortable roles. And so if we're all changing, then we can't be like, but Danielle, you've always been the person that does, why aren't you doing this anymore, right? And it might be like, yeah, you're right, I may have always been that person, but from now on, I am giving you agency and ownership to show up and be an adult and handle that on your own, so I don't have to. So all of us are working on being more accountable. So what is it that you're going to want to do so that you are not relying on me, so that I'm reminding you to do whatever? I'm not saying this is happening. I'm just kind of creating a random example. Does that make sense? So this is really, really important. So bandwidth belief is really about kind of coming back to this idea of, do you actually believe that it's possible? Right? Are you trying to achieve a goal that internally or unconsciously you don't believe you're capable of achieving? So that's one side of it. Or is it something that you actually have enough energetic bandwidth and space and time and focus to actually deal with and address and do at the very moment? So it addresses kind of two components, one a mindset piece and the other one's kind of an energetic piece. Okay, so this is important because a lot of times we might set a goal in the middle of something, like you're trying to. So I had a really good friend of mine that I can't remember what it was that he was trying to do. He was trying to do something, and then he was getting married and running a marathon. And I was like, dude, that doesn't sound like it's a very good idea, right? Because all of a sudden, like, these are like really big things that might be really competing, right? So it's fine to get married and it's fine to run a marathon and do this big thing on your business. Trying to do it all at the same time is just probably insanity. Do you see what I'm saying? From the other side is, are you staying so busy doing all the menial tasks, right? So Mike, you and I have talked about this, but like, do we get so caught up on like, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and doing all of the menial tasks that all of a sudden we're not making time to actually focus on the things that really matter and creating, the goals that are going to achieve our dreams and that. Okay, so these are things that you are going to want to be considering. And then whether you're going to have all the resources that you need to achieve what you want to do. Lastly, this probably will speak to Danielle and Brent a little bit more about having autonomy. Will I be given the trust and the authority I need to feel as though I'm in control to make it happen, right? When people feel severely micromanaged, a lot of time they don't own things as much, right? So which is why it's kind of important to create both goals that are like involving people. When you're creating goals for your own divisions, that you involve your team leaders so that they feel invested and they feel like you are trusting them and they have, and then you're giving them the resources, but also the autonomy to go do it rather than. Okay, any questions so far? Making sense? Cool. Yeah. So we've talked about this, but I'm just gonna give you a little reminder because this matters. These are the things that usually get in the way, right? So remembering who's in control of your goals.
You are.
Correct. Okay, so what are the things that you control?
You.
Yeah, what are those three things that you control?
Three things that you control: your
Beliefs
your
and
attitudes and behaviors.
Good job. You get a star. Kais and Dave, they're cheating because they have the notes here.
No, we are not.
Beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors, right? Those are the only things that you control. Yes.
I would say I don't know. I feel like I'm in both.
What do you mean?
Word and others.
Control the world.
You
So
think you control those?
yeah, do you think that you can control those?
Yeah.
So here's the thing.
Fix Donald Trump then.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my word. I'm not saying the whole word.
Right.
But I mean,
right.
yeah, I'm saying my word.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we mean. Like, that's you, right? Like, you get to choose what you're going to do, how you're going to feel, what you're going to think. Like, you get to control your world, but you cannot control other people. Now, I do say others you can influence in a positive sense, or you can manipulate in a negative sense, right?
Yeah, that definitely. Yeah, that definitely the right meaning, to be honest. Yes.
Yeah. So, however, it's really, really important that we have clarity that we don't have control. Like, we can exert our most influential powers, and then people still are free to make their own choices, right? I think that a lot of times, we think we can make people do stuff through manipulation, but then we are now taking withdrawals, major withdrawals from that relationship, which we really don't want to do. And then the world is everything else, which we have zero control over, okay? And this is really important to remember, because when we try to control that which is uncontrollable, we feel out of control. Does that make sense? So if you ever notice that you're feeling really out of control, you're feeling really frustrated, really sad, really overwhelmed, and feeling really out of control, like, stop and ask yourself, like, okay, are these things that I'm worrying about, are these things actually within the realm of my control? Because if they're not, then you are actually making yourself miserable by trying to control something that is uncontrollable, right? And so, and this also relates to people, which most of the time people are the things that tend to make us the most nutty. Do you see what I'm saying? But equally, like, we can't control the weather, and we can't, right? So those kinds of things. And so it's really, really important to remember this, because then ultimately achieving those goals and how you're setting them comes back to you, right? So if you're like, well, I didn't do the blah, blah, blah because, my husband was, now you're just making excuses. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. So, and then I just put that in there as a reminder, because this is part of where we go. Like, we make excuses, right? So whenever we are not achieving a goal, we make excuses. So here's a whole bunch of the ways in which we avoid to take ownership for the things that we are wanting to do. And there's probably some others that I did not include there. So kind of looking at those, I want you to identify what are your most favorite avoidance tactics.
Talking.
Okay.
Music.
Analyzing.
Probably busy work.
Mm-hmm.
Probably busy work.
Yeah, probably working. Sometimes, like, in personal life, I just like turn to work.
Yep.
Get out of it.
Yep.
Exercising sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Music, food, music.
Okay. So I want you to write those down. Dave or Kais, do you have favorite ways in which you avoid
Busy work.
busy work? Okay.
Analyzing.
Okay. So why I'm having you write this down is because I want you to notice, like, these are the excuses that you're gonna make for not doing something.
I mean, like, food is like excess, like eating food.
Right. Yeah, but it could be. But I mean, food could be all kinds of things. It could be like, oh, I have this. I'm gonna make cookies.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right? Or like, I'm gonna go have a snack.
But that's what I mean, like go eating lunch.
Right. So instead of actually like sitting down and doing work,
Right.
I'm gonna go have a snack. So and you all will have areas where getting focused and achieving those goals is really easy, and areas where it isn't. Okay, so I'll give you my own personal example. I'm very good at being focused and getting stuff done when it relates to work. I am terrible at following through in goals that relates to personal stuff, like, you know, getting to the gym or doing yoga or eating better, like those things. And then my excuse is usually like, well, I have a lot of work. You know, I have more work to do, so I don't have time to do those things, right? And so it kind of goes both ways, right? My husband, on the other hand, is like a health freak, and he goes to the gym every day, and right? And so sometimes I'm like, are you just going to the gym and like not getting your work done? You see what I'm saying? So we all are gonna have, and so it's important that you recognize what that is so that you know where you're gonna fall. Okay? And so there's usually payoffs. There's reasons why we do the stuff that we do. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but I'm just kind of, I want to give you a little bit of a review so that you kind of have the whole picture, right? Is that we tend to use any of these excuses as well as what I call gremlins, which are like sort of any kind of negative emotion, like disappointment and guilt and anger and frustration and accumulation and resentment, being scattered, distracted. All of those are gremlins, and there are usually some kind of way to avoid, right, to kick you into an avoidance mode. So I'll give you an example. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, well now that just gives me a good excuse for slacking off and not being accountable. And now I'm just gonna go do something else because I just can't handle it. Does that make sense? And so it's important that you start noticing, like, what are my patterns? What are the things that that tend to get to me? And then what is it that I'm looking for? You know, so a lot of times it might be like that you're like playing the martyr and being like, oh, you never blah, blah, blah. So what am I looking for?
Attention.
Yeah, attention, recognition, appreciation, right? And so when you start recognizing that, if you could just be like, you know what, I'd really like to get a little like good job and appreciation for a job well done because I've blah, blah. And then you ask it and people are like, yeah, you've done a great job. Then you feel good and then you move on to your merry way and then you avoid that whole thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is a lot more complicated. I'm trying to give you kind of a big, but I want you to, why I'm asking you to identify what these things are is that these are the things that are actually gonna get in the way of you not achieving your goals. You see what I'm saying? So if you tend to get frustrated easily, if you tend to get angry, if you tend to get anxious, if you tend to get sad, distracted, scattered, sick even, you know, embarrassed. Like, so think about those kind of states of being. Those are typically ways in which we unconsciously choose to give ourselves an out on why we're not actually following through on something. Does that make sense? And so I'm wanting you to identify what those things are because it will help, like you'll notice, right? So I can tell you that for me, it's like hands down overwhelm, right? And so then so part of my strategy is working in all kinds of ways to avoid overwhelm. And even when I'm feeling that way, I really try not to even use the word because just saying it kind of tips me over into like the excuse mode. So I often be like, okay, like I'm feeling a little stretched. How can I get support? Blah, blah. Do you see what I'm saying? But unless you recognize what those things are, then we will keep falling in the same trap over and over. Okay? So are there things that are kind of popping up for each of you that you say like, yeah, this happens for me. I get frustrated, or I get angry, or I get anxious, or I get whatever.
I feel like one of my go-tos, I wrote down 3, tired, stressed, and anxious. Okay. I feel like whenever something comes up, like I'm just so tired, I'm too tired.
I can't deal.
Like constant.
Right? So good excuse for
What?
And then I was just, you're tired, I can sleep for like a million hours.
Yeah, I can't sleep.
And you guys are new parents, but you know.
Yeah, so I really am tired of people. But I don't know. I know what I'm like. I'm asking for like help to take off some of the load, but I feel like I'm comfortable asking for it. Or I feel like I'm not enough if I have to ask for it. Like I should be able to do everything, and I'm like weaker if I have to ask for help. So
Good.
maybe it's just like an excuse for not asking for help.
Yes, and exactly. And it's a great, I love that you're sharing that because you just even shared how it's tying to a negative belief, right? So I'm doing this because my belief is that if I ask for help, I'm not good enough, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm weak, or, right? So then being able to say it out loud is important, then being able to practice it. You see what I'm saying? Is the other piece. Okay, what other things are showing up for
I have a tendency to like fixate on things, whether it's in the past or the future. Like if I made a mistake, I'll fixate on it, or if I'm worried about something coming up, I'll fixate on it, and then like can't stop thinking about
Uh-huh. So rumination,
it. Yeah.
it's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it doing? What is it? How is it serving you?
I don't know. Maybe for like the future stuff, in some ways it's almost like, and maybe this is not the right answer, but like reassurance. I'm trying to convince myself that by thinking about it more, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I'll think through all the problems to prevent them.
Mm-hmm. So it's probably serving a few things.
Right.
Reassurance, probably not risking.
Mm.
Like it's keeping you in a loop and not taking action.
Yeah.
And it's keeping you from actually risking
Mm-hmm.
and not making a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then having a good excuse why you're not.
Right.
And I think that there's a piece about protection.
Mm-hmm.
That, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that it's so this is powerful because when you can even recognize like one state of being is actually serving a whole bunch of things, then no wonder you go to it so often, right? So this would be an example, like breaking the pattern from doing that would be something that would take longer, right? Because you're gonna have to practice actually getting to this sooner. Right? Actually asking for reassurance from somebody, or saying, you know, I'm really afraid I'm going to make a mistake, and maybe I just need to be pushed to just take action, even if it's the wrong action, just so that I can get over this thing. Yeah, great. Others?
Analyzing for me, especially when the answer isn't clear or it doesn't make sense, because I want everything to make sense. And so then over-analyzing to try and figure out why it doesn't make sense. When some things sometimes just don't make sense.
Correct. So what's the payoff?
I think some sort of justification.
Is there a non-risking or a superiority?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe some sort of reassurance too.
Okay.
On, like, did you make the right choice, and that's why it didn't make sense, or all of those things. But that's what I went to first: justification and reassurance.
Okay. Does it tie into not taking action at all? I'm just asking.
No, I don't.
Usually analyzing, there's this thing that I call analysis paralysis, right? So while there's a time and a place to analyze, when you get into overanalyzing, then it paralyzes you, and then now you're just not taking action.
Yeah, I don't think so, because usually it's after the action.
Okay.
So not necessarily before the action, it's after the action on either it worked or it didn't work.
Okay.
And then overanalyzing.
Okay,
why
so that you're not
work,
letting it go.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will say something about this, because whenever it's serving any kind of protection, and especially all of you that are so smart, it becomes actually really challenging, because I'm gonna use Danielle as an example because she verbalized her belief, right? So her belief was, it means that I'm not good enough, or it means that I'm not strong enough if I ask for help. And so basically you start creating loops around that, right? If I do this and it means this, so I don't want to feel that, so then I'm going to do this thing, and so then it keeps you stuck. So it makes it a little harder to identify the stuff, right? And so if it's like it doesn't resonate with you or your values or your beliefs, then it's going to keep you stuck longer. And so if you're noticing that this is some of where, then you might need to think through and dig a little bit more about like how it's showing up, and maybe even ask feedback from other people to help you on loop, if that makes sense. Okay, Mike, Jeremy.
No, for me. I mean, for me, I wind up. And then
Yes,
I wind up,
you
and
do.
then I crash.
Yes.
Right, kind of, but I don't crash long. But then, well, sometimes
Crash
it's long.
hard, man.
So I
Might not
crash.
be long, but it's a
Yeah.
hard crash.
Yeah. So, and I don't know.
I relate so much to that,
Yeah.
Mike, because I'm the same way. I call it the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, that's the way. But I don't know why I don't know what excuse I don't know.
I think that there's probably some type of recognition piece there, whether it's attention
Maybe
or
some attention.
appreciation or there might be a little piece of image control and trying to maintain
Maybe.
status.
What about like exercise? I mean, it's a good gremlin, like it's a good
Yeah.
outlet, but like I feel like sometimes maybe exercise
Well,
is a little bit of a crash.
For me,
Exercise might be the way that he avoids.
yeah, the way I get out of it,
Yeah.
when I know I'm doing it now, I'm learning what sets it off is because I'm not doing the exercise. All of a sudden, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
And I keep on working, then I'm working at night, then I'm working I get up early in the morning, then I'm always thinking. It just keeps on going. And so all the good habits I have of that stuff go away. When I'm exercising, it's very rare that I ever wind up. Right?
And
part of it starts with trips, because then I fall behind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then I start going, and I go, I don't have time for that.
Right. Which I agree with you. Because we're so similar. Like it's so funny because I'm so the same way. Like I'm helping my husband with this thing, all the videos that he's doing, but I'm doing all the back end. So I'm setting up the pages where things are gonna go. And like the other day, I like literally woke myself up because I was dreaming and I was saying, that link's not working. We need to, and I was like, oh my God, let it go. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I do.
Yeah. Yep. That would be a great example. So kind of recognizing so that it's winding up.
Yeah.
And you might notice it, but people around you might too, right?
Yeah.
That's why I say
Oh,
like
they
the
might notice it
Tasmanian
before me.
before you. That's what I'm saying. So that's why I call it a Tasmanian devil. And so it's helpful if other people around you notice it and tell you, so that you can start taking action before, because it's going to be harder when you're like at the peak to bring it down than if you notice it as you're climbing to like pull it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Jeremy?
I feel like I lose focus. Just like stare through my screen or stare through people. Probably use for I'm not even sure, honestly. Slacking off.
Slacking off?
Yeah.
Right.
Avoidance. Maybe sympathy, but not really.
Okay. So, and it might be helpful also to recognize when you're doing that, when you're trying to get this, versus just saying like, I need a break. And I just need to like get up and walk around or, do some jumping jacks or go out and go for a walk before I can come back and keep working on this stuff. Because I think a lot of times we tend to say, well, I need to, right? And then we keep pushing, and there's times when it's probably more appropriate, especially when that's the case, that you need to be like. So one strategy is focus or losing concentration or feeling scattered is a thing that I like to use is getting a kitchen timer and putting a kitchen timer next to your workstation, and then setting like basically work intervals, so that you're, instead of saying I'm going to work on this for like the next 5 hours, you say I'm going to work on this for the next 60 minutes or the next 45 minutes or the whatever. And so then your mind just immediately is like, okay, well, I just have this much time. It's going to focus and going to get that much done. And then you can say, you can take a break, right? And then you can take a break for 10 minutes.
Even when I'm not done.
Right. Yeah, you can take a break even for 10 minutes, and then you can come back and set another 45 or 60-minute interval. And you can keep doing that back and forth. Yet your mind is always going to be way more productive when you are giving it a short time frame than if you're like, I have all day to do this.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time when we do that, we probably are going to mess around for like several hours throughout the day doing other stuff that's unrelated until your mind hits into focus, and then you get really focused. And so it's like, okay, if you're going to do that anyway, like just be intentional.
Or like an email comes in and I immediately just go right to it.
Right.
And try to get that done first.
Exactly.
Just to clear it out of the inboxes.
Right. But if you have the timer and you're like, I only have this much time,
To do this.
if the email or the text comes in, you're going to be like, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'm going to do as much as I can in this time period. And then once I have a break, maybe I can, you know, go to the bathroom, drink water, check my email, blah, 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 and then come back.
I'm sure it's different for every person, but
Oh,
is
yeah.
there any research on like productivity and focus like that on time intervals? Like
Yes.
what is that sweet spot?
Yes, 45 minutes.
45. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yes, 45 minutes. And yet there are people that do so, and I'll speak to people that have some kind of ADHD type tendency, that you can lock in to what I call the ADHD superpower, which is hyper focus. And so then when you kind of go into an interval and then you lock in, then you can like work for like extended periods of time without interruption. And in fact, you don't want to be interrupted. Like if you're interrupted, you're going to be kind of pissy because you're like in your genius zone and you're like flowing and you just want to keep going. You know what I'm saying? So, but in general, it's 45 minutes. I want to go to Dave. Dave, are there things that you recognize, and I know that you're not looking at this thing, so, but that you recognize that show up for you, feeling states that then become payoffs or excuses to avoid?
I would say avoidance. Avoidance to maintain image control.
Uh-huh.
So I may not ask for help, you know, for fear of, you know, looking weak, looking like a failure, so to speak.
Uh-huh. Okay. So similar to Danielle.
I would say so.
Okay. So team. Okay. Because this is an example. I want you to guys, as you guys are sharing this, that you learn about this from each other so that you can support each other. Right. So if you happen to walk by Jeremy's desk and you see him, just be like,
Just been
dude,
That's how it's been lately.
right? Like be like, dude, you need to take a break. Come on, like let's do, you know, we need to do some jumping jacks. Let's put your timer. Let's do this, right? Then you might actually then go to Danielle or Dave and actually be like, hey, how you doing? Do you need any help? Because they're probably not gonna immediately ask for it. I want you to, both of you, I want you to work on asking, and that's coming from you. But as a team knowing that, then you might just want to initially check in.
I know she's gonna say no.
Well, right? Well, and this is why knowing each other is so helpful, right? Because you could be like, okay, I need to say no because that's your knee-jerk response, and you actually do need some help, and you know, it doesn't mean anything about you, right?
At what point do you just let it go and like, okay, they either don't want the help, they still won't tell me they need the help, or?
So at times the help is leave them alone.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? So that could be. So I'll give you an example. So I have the gift of having ADHD, so I get really like hyper focused on stuff, and if I'm working on things, I just don't want to be interrupted, right? And my husband will come in and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Fine." You know, "Are you upset?" "No." "Is there something wrong?" "No." And I'm like, "Just stop asking me questions. I just want to focus on this stuff," right? And so then I'm just like, he's like, "You just want to be left alone." I'm like, "Yeah." And so then he just leaves, and then that's perfect, right? Because then, you know, that's exactly what I need, right? If he's just like, "Oh, like you seem kind of," and keeps trying, like it's just not gonna end well. And so just for him, just learning that about me, right? So, like there's times recently he's like, "I think you're hangry. Would you like me to make you a snack?" Right? And he just kind of passed me a snack and then left, right? And so then now it's my choice. I can choose to do whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? So sometimes help might be just, okay, I just need you to leave me alone so I can focus and get this done. Sometimes help might be like, "Yeah, sure, do this," or so, yeah. Kais,
Yes.
are there things that you notice that show up for you more often, that you're resonating, that is kind of creating some kind of payoff?
Like, I mean,
So do you get frustrated often, or do you get scattered or tired or anxious or overwhelmed?
I would say anxious. Yeah, like, I mean, anxious.
Good. Okay. So when you get anxious, what do you think that that's doing? Like, how do you think that that's helping you? And why I come from this perspective is that whatever we do, we are unconsciously doing to meet a need. Like we don't do anything that is not useful in some way or another, right? I mean, not that. Right? So how is that serving you?
Okay, can I
So
say?
Look at the payoffs slide and like tell me, like anxiety helps me feel like maybe get more recognition, or anxiety is a good excuse for me to like slack off or to not take risks or to just maintain status.
No, it's I cannot answer. I do not know how to answer, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm not able really to express exactly.
Like you're not really sure how it's serving you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe, I mean, I have a lot of anxiety about things too, and I feel like Kais and I might be kind of similar. Like I get anxious and then I just work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to work, and I feel like Kais gets anxious maybe and he wants to work, and maybe that's because it's almost like, at least for me, it's like, well, if I'm working, then I have to be getting something done, and so somehow I'm gonna get there. But even if I'm not efficient, you know.
Yeah. Kais, can you relate to what Danielle's saying?
I think yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, yeah, really close. Yes.
So what that would be, and this is the reason why I say this is hard, is it's a justification. He's justifying his behavior, right? He's justifying overworking and.
Yeah, I would say yeah. I would keep working. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's reinforcing a belief, right? It's reinforcing that as long as you work, right, then you're gonna have some kind of control over things. And my guess is that now this makes sense, that some of that anxiety comes up because you are trying to control the world and other people, and these things are not actually in your jurisdiction to be controlling. Okay.
And if we go back to controlling, it's like okay, just like, I mean, to be perfect as much as possible.
Yeah.
I would say it's like sometimes I feel like, I mean, this is impossible, but I'm, pushing more and more and more, just like, I mean, to exceed the lines, let's say.
Yeah. So So for you, I think that based on what you just said, and also what your team that knows you have said, it's a justification, it reinforces some beliefs, and it's also an image control, right? Like it's trying to keep you feeling like you have things under control and appearing like you have things under control on the outside as well. Okay, so so this is really important. Do you guys know how that shows up for him, like how he appears when he's anxious?
No, truthfully, I work with Kais quite a bit. I've not seen him anxious ever. But I'll say this, he's a workaholic.
Well, so anxiety doesn't always, can't always see it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sure there's triggers, be it, hey, I got to go smoke or whatever it is, but I don't know what, I'm not sure I know him well enough to know what the triggers are, but he never looks like he's anxious to me. But you guys, he looks always very calm to me. But he does work, a symptom, I think I get wound up. He just is wound. Right? And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. He's consistent. That's better than me, right? But it's like he just works.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the best things about Kais, at least working with Kais, that we all appreciate, I know, and probably take advantage of to some extent, is his willingness to like just do things. Like he's like, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. And I like that because then I'm like, good, you take care of it. I don't have to take care of it. But maybe that's a question for Kais. Maybe that's his, anxiety. Like I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Could not be.
Yeah. That would be, well, because then all of a sudden, like, and my guess, given what you're saying, Danielle, is that there's also a piece about, Kais, do you try to avoid conflict?
Yeah, I do avoid. Yeah, I do try to avoid conflict. Yes.
So it's a conflict avoidance strategy, because if he says, I'll do it, then all of a sudden, all of the tension and discussion about who's going to take care of this and what's going to happen gets dissipated. So to his expense, because now he's adding more work to him, but the payoff for him is peace. Like, I don't have to deal with the tension of, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted each of you to kind of start identifying these things so that you can help and support each other. And so as you look at your goals, okay, I want you to, and if you filled out all of this, and so, and Kais, I apologize because I did not send you this, so I will be sending this to you so that you have it, okay? So what I'm talking about right now, you don't have in your hands, but I will send this to you so that you can fill it out and then you can send it to me. So I had asked kind of what are the things that you want to accomplish, and then what are the habits, and then I also asked kind of some of the things of like what are you going to tell yourself when you get discouraged? Because if you start taking into consideration these things, then now you can start looking at like, here are the things that tend to derail me, right? And how I'm going to ask from support. So when I said these are the people, places, programs, things that are going to help me, right? Is the people that you put in there, these are the people that you need to have a conversation with and say, here's the way in which I would like you to support me in these goals, right? So Mike, I'm just going to take you as an example just because I have your stuff in here, right? It's about, so some of your goals that you wrote in here are about your company goals. And so I'm going to kind of look at these kind of a little bit like some of the dream goals. That, but then the habits that you said were like, exercise daily, clear your mind,
right.
Focus on key items, build time to think, which this kind of goes a little bit to the piece of winding. So you notice that some of the things that he has put in there, right, like sleep, build time to think, focusing, exercising, are about winding down. Okay, so whether he understood that like being wound up was part of what was derailing him at an unconscious level, he knew, because the habits that he has written in here are really about tackling that. Does that make sense? And so so you had put like Brent, which is not here, Kai's, and if there's anybody else like here that you're gonna want to add that can say like, so kind of like the keyword that we said for Danielle, right? Like what was it?
Shells.
Shells, right? So that's the keyword to say like, okay, crunchy, right? So that then that they might come up with a keyword to say like
you're winding up or whatever.
You know.
Ramping. Ramping's a good one.
Ramping, okay? And that then gives you feedback for you to be like, okay, I need to, you know, take a deep breath, whatever. Jeremy, you know, if distraction is a thing, or we might just be like, squirrel, right? And then that might be the thing that like, it's like, oh, right, like, do you see what I'm saying? So again, I'm having you as a team build support, because ultimately you are responsible for making this happen, but you will be 100 times more successful if your team knows what those things are and can be like, hey, I'm seeing you, right? Okay, so what are things, I want to give each an opportunity, I'm kind of thinking of time, but I also want to give each an opportunity to at least say one of the things that you want to achieve, and like what is it that you need to do, like what is a habit, what's the big why about it, like how are you going to reward yourself? Does that make sense? So taking one thing.
You want me to do
one thing.
one of these on the top box here?
Right.
You're talking about?
Right.
Okay, I'll do sales of 1.5 million rate for FCT water.
Okay, so then what's the one habit that you're going to use? What's the
Well,
action step?
my habits are just to stay wound down.
Okay,
be truthful,
great. Yes,
because
great.
I'm always thinking and working.
Yes, great.
But that's hopefully going to keep me relaxed and balanced, and maybe not burn these guys out.
Yes, great.
What was the other question?
So I want basically to say one thing from each box, right? Of how you're going to be supporting that. So like,
how will I accomplish
step?
this again? For me, you know, I don't know, maybe I did this wrong, but for me, I don't have a problem with accomplishing these things in terms of my work rate. Right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about getting overwhelmed, right? And so for me, the next thing is I've got to make sure what I wrote here, when I'm trying to do, how do I want to feel when I accomplish this, is I want to feel enjoyment.
Yeah.
You know, for me, truthfully, I feel joy, but it's really short, and I moved on to the next goal. As soon as I had a real quick story, I'll tell you with Glenn, we hit 40,000 a month in sales one day, and we were in Minnesota, and Glenn said, we did it. And I go, Jesus, we got to get to 80,000 now. Right? And he goes, that's it? And I go, well, let's have dinner. Right? So it never ends for me anyways.
Yeah. So I might suggest, Mike, because these are great goals, and I might suggest then that maybe some of these goals that you're writing, that you rework the goals that are actually a stretch, if you know what I mean. So the stretch for you might be like, stop work at X time.
Yeah.
You know.
So I wasn't sure. These are all work-related goals.
Yes.
For the most part, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure either.
So
which is
I'm not sure
okay.
that's right still.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because like, and I'm saying this just knowing like I am very much like you, and I'm like, yeah, I can set all these goals, and I know that. But if I am actually thinking like, oh, I want to get like in really good shape, or I want like, those are the things that are really
those are harder for me to
stretch
accomplish. Yeah.
right?
Is there a goal with work that is like your content point, where you're like, there's nothing beyond that?
I don't know if I'll ever be content with work, truthfully. But I guess my ultimate goal is to be done. And I think the ultimate goal is to build a management team that allows me to walk away from work and get to the point where I work for somebody. Instead of me driving it and leading it, build such a good group of managers that I'm done. And I have obviously the freedom at that point in time from a financial standpoint to sit back, relax, take time off, just people watch and say, okay, give me a project. Where do you need help? That's the ultimate goal for me, right? That's it.
So Tyler, this is a great question.
Write that down.
No.
This is a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because part of, and this is kind of branching over to the next section, but it's good because part of what actually motivates Mike is not actually getting to a place.
Mm-hmm.
It's he gets excited by the chase, so to speak, right? So it's not, when you say, well, is there a place that you want to get to? No, because it's not really about a place or right?
Yeah.
Like he could say, well, I like this, but once he's there, there's always going to be something
the
else.
challenge of
It
getting
is
there.
about the challenge of getting there.
It's not
It's
the
about the
journey.
chase, the journey. Of
And it
getting
could
there.
be even a negative thing, kind of like the Bears, or let's say we don't hit 1.5 million in sales. It's okay. I don't get upset and that upset. I go, Jesus, I wish we would hit our goal. Okay, what are we going to do now? What's the plan? Okay, what's the next goal? I don't dwell on that stuff.
Okay, so from what you're saying, do you see what I'm saying? So that part of, like, so while these goals are good, I'm not,
Yeah.
it might be that some of the goals that you look at are based on the thing that stretches you, right?
Yeah.
So some of my goals are like, get to bed by 11 p.m. And while that might seem like such a simple thing,
Yeah.
that is one of the hardest things for
Yeah.
me to do, because that involves me quitting work at a certain time and then actually winding down
Yeah.
enough for me to like freaking get to bed, right? And so what you're gonna put in here is gonna be different for each of you, and it's gonna be the thing that stretches you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the support that's built around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And for me, like those types of goals, a great goal, I couldn't do it, but a great goal would be turn off your computer at 6 or 7
Correct.
and be done. For the
Correct.
night, right? That'd be a good goal.
Just like,
I could do it for a day or two, but could I do it? Like, I mean, be done? Nah.
but so what time do you normally turn off your computer?
Well, I turn it off when I get home and I hang out with kids, but then usually when the kids are going to bed, I go turn it back on.
Right. And then what time do you turn it off?
It just depends. It could be 10, could be midnight, 1 in the morning. I don't know.
Okay. So then here's kind of an example of what I said about being a stretch but also being realistic, right? So you setting a goal to turn off your computer at 6 p.m. might be a bust.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's actually like hitting way out of reality for you, right? But maybe setting the goal for you to turn off your computer at like 10.
Yeah.
Or like giving them a window, like I can only do
Yeah.
9, 10:30.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That might be
Yeah.
more realistic,
At 1 hour.
Yeah, 1 hour.
right? It will still challenge you, but it
Yeah.
will be more realistic
Start that
within.
kitchen
Or
time.
like a number of days a week. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? So-
Correct.
Yeah, if I worked only, let's say 5 or maybe 4 days a week, right? But for me, then you take away my joy of Sunday of working for an hour or two in
Well, no,
peace
we're
and
talking
We're
quiet.
not taking it away. We're saying you're choosing. So these are your goals, okay? So this is important.
So these are the things I've got to think about, right, for me. Because in truth, that's my ultimate goal, is my vision is to build a great company with great people. I don't necessarily want to sell. I want to, in a sense, let them take it over.
Mhm.
And for me, be sitting on a bench in Chicago watching the people go by, and there's my granddaughter hanging out with me, and we're walking around. But then the next day I go, I think I'm gonna work on this a little bit. What do you got?
So here's how I want, and I'm using Mike as an example so that each of you are kind of learning. So here's how might tie this to his big why, right? So say, like, just have your computer done by 10 or only have an hour that you work on, whatever, however you set it up. It might feel like just a task, right? And again, when we make things that are just a task disconnected from something bigger, then it's easy to blow them, right? So it will be important that we connect it to something bigger, right? So the something bigger, and you have, so some of these things are big things for you, but like, I think that the big thing for you is that you want to have an exit plan. You want to be able to go on vacation and actually disconnect. So you have to train yourself to do that in order to do it in a big scale. Right? So when you are tempted to keep working, it's not about like, I did it or I didn't do it, right? You then bring your big why, so that then that gives you the motivation to keep doing in the moment, or to quit, or to stop, and to be like, there's a bigger reason why I'm doing this task that right now might not feel like it's what I want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I also train us to do that too.
Correct.
Yeah. But for me, we're getting into me personally, but for me, I'm in a race. My mind is always in a race, right? I'm always racing.
Yes.
And you say, well, where you're racing to? Because whenever you get there, you keep on going. The race continues, right? But in truth, I view it as, in order for me to be able to hit that plan and to give my partners who I really love, what they need. I need to make a certain amount. This company has to make a certain amount of money so that I can take care of you all and take care of them, so that they're happy in their exit plan, but it doesn't bankrupt the company going forward.
So is this the first time that you have said this to these people?
No, they might know this probably.
Okay.
They might not know the numbers that strategically I'm thinking of to get there, to where I can say, okay, that if I get to that number, and my strategy by which I'm going to be able to accomplish is, I'm not saying it will work, but
right. No, but so I'm asking this is really important though, because you start seeing how the big why is bigger. So his big why might be to have an exit plan, and it's actually bigger. It's like, yes, have an exit plan, but take care of all of you, take care of all my partners, and have the company keep growing. So there's a legacy piece that's motivating him, right? So which is kind of going into a little bit into the vision. If they don't know that, right, and you haven't communicated and you haven't told them the numbers, how do you expect them to be so fired up?
right.
Right?
They know their numbers in a sense to get. I add all the numbers up.
Right. No, I get that. But do you
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? But it might be helpful for them, because now they realize, like, now Tyler can be like, bless you, it's not just about hitting this number in assembly. It's not just about hitting this number in water just because you decided that was a pretty number, right? Like, now they could be like, the big why is so that we can, like, grow this company, so that we're all well, so that partners are well, so that the company keeps growing, so that there's like this big legacy piece.
Yeah, and there's more pieces. There's more layers.
There's a lot of layers to that. Do you see what I'm saying? But that's important, right? Like, that would be really important for them to know. And we're talking both company and personal, but I'm trying to help you see how these things, how you want to connect these things, because otherwise, following through on the stuff will be challenging. Does that make sense? Okay, so any of you, tell me one of the things that you are wanting to work on.
For me, one of the big things is I need to learn to accept the unknown. Being out of the loop, or just not knowing things. I guess. So
what's a habit that you're gonna practice in order for you to be okay with that and have and not have anxiety get the worst of you and not have that?
Well, I said 10-minute daily meditation. I feel like that's a starting point at least. But just to be able to just get all these thoughts that are running through my mind and constantly thinking and questioning, be able to just sit there for 10 minutes and push that all out and then kind of reset.
Great.
And obviously what I want to feel is more relaxed and focused. And then maybe to get there, this one it's kind of like a hard thing to like measure and pinpoint. So it was hard for me to put like a concrete action, but I basically set like my daily priorities so I can like look at it within the context of how is fixating on this or thinking about this or needing to know this going to help me get that done.
Well, so I'm going to give you a suggestion because the habit that you identified to help you with that was meditation.
Right.
So you might then set, so the habit was daily meditation. So you might set a calendar, right? And then you say it's going to be at least 10 minutes. It could be more, right? And then every day you write down on the calendar the number of minutes that you wrote, and then maybe you give yourself a little star. And then you start tallying the stars, right? And after so many stars, maybe you say, after I hit 10 days, I'm going to give myself a reward. Like it could just be a latte. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
like at the next 10 days, because now you're building a way both to measure and to reward yourself for actually creating that habit. So it's usually within the first 2 weeks of trying to create something different that we're most likely to abandon it, because that's when it's hardest. It's not going to be created within 2 weeks, but once you get through 2 weeks, it'll be easier to keep going. Okay. Help, support.
Like people?
Yeah.
Well, I put Alyssa,
Great.
my parents, basically everyone here, my friends, and myself.
So, and again, and I'm just using this as an example because, so if you say, I'm going to meditate daily, when are you going to do that?
First thing when I wake up, probably.
Okay. So will you need to have a conversation with the people that you live that they need to be quiet for the first however many minutes?
Yeah, I'm the one that's supposed to be quiet.
Okay.
No, that's just something I just need to make into my morning routine.
Well, I mean, I'm asking, like, do you see what I'm saying? Because again, you know, like you could say, yeah, I'm going to do this, right? And then your household wakes up and turns on the TV and they're having a parade and meditating in that environment might not be the best.
Yeah, but don't you think, I would say for you, Connor, let's say you wake up in the morning, for me at least, that's when I'm kind of calmest. Yeah. And so if I do the meditation while I'm kind of already in a meditative state, do I get the real value out of it? Aren't I better to do it while things are crazy? Right. And then maybe not. Okay.
My perspective is that when you're starting, it's best to do it when you're in a calm state, because then it's easier to associate meditation with a calm state. So I like to meditate first thing in the morning when I'm like super chill and my brain's not already going like a zillion miles per hour.
I come out of bed like that.
Which, you know, then you probably will really benefit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I come out of bed just guns hot for the day.
Okay, so then it would be really good.
I get rid of this tool belt.
What are we doing today?
When I was like 4, I would wake my mom up at 4:45 in the morning and say, "What are we doing today with the tool belt on?" So things, I guess, don't change.
Right. So it might be. So now, Mike, to your point, it's a good training, right? And then when you're feeling chaotic,
right,
then you could say, "I'm noticing that I probably need to take some time to do another meditation." I mean, there's days that I meditate like 8 times a day, and it's not because I'm a Buddha, or it's because things were so hectic that I really needed to meditate that long to get through the day.
For me, probably my most relaxed time of the day is probably like 4 to 5 in the afternoon, because I feel like I've gotten organized. I've done everything, and I've had my plan and all that stuff. So then that's probably a better time for me.
Do you feel like that every day, or is 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon come and you're like, I didn't get done what I needed to get done? And
it just depends on the day.
So
most of the time, like that, like a couple hours before dinner, like because I start work early, so like 3, 4. Once I feel like I've had a full productive day, that's when I'm most calm.
So you might need to experiment.
Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes it's best to get it done early.
Right.
You know, and set you up. But you might need to experiment. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
Try.
probably morning though, just because like I do tend to, like when I don't work out in the morning, it won't happen in the afternoon.
Right, correct.
'Cause
And that's why I said that.
Yeah, because like someone will call and, hey, let's go to a brewery or whatever, and I'm like so social, I want to go.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Jeremy.
I have a couple, but one of mine was read more books.
Mm-hmm.
And one of mine was wake up earlier.
Okay.
To get that done.
Okay.
Wake up earlier.
Okay,
What time do you wake up now?
Like 7 on the dot.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Okay, but if he wants to read, then
Yeah,
you
if
want to
I'm
read in the
then I
morning.
have to. Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yes. So waking up
'Cause I-
earlier is a habit.
That's what
Yes.
I want to adopt. Yeah.
Great. Great. So then what's the action step? Do you need to set an alarm? Do you need to go to bed? Do you need to go to bed earlier? Do you need to
All of that.
get the book set next to your thing? Do you actually need to get up and out of bed to make sure that you read the book and you don't fall asleep?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I actually kind of, I was a little bit confused on if these were our goals that went here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just like, so, because some goals might need to be broken down, right? So like the waking up earlier could seem very simple, but in order for you to wake up earlier, like there might be a whole host of things that need to happen
Right.
the day before.
Well,
So that you
goes into
wake
what
early.
Matt was like eating better because I can't wake up early if I'm not eating better.
Right.
So because I don't eat very healthy.
Right. Yes. So some things kind of have that little.
Yeah, exactly.
So that the action step might be then, you know, setting alarms to go to bed earlier, right? And then maybe like so. And this is a piece about knowing yourselves, right? Like I'm having a lot of like know yourself, like where are you more likely to fall? Not so that you feel bad. It's just so that you know like what you like. How do you anticipate your future self? And then being super honest, then how do you set things up so that future self can be successful, right? So I'll give you an example. I am definitely not a morning person, unlike Connor. I am a bear in the morning. I am like not pleasant in any way, shape, or form, which is part of the reason why I meditate in the morning to try to get myself set up. But if I wanted to exercise in the morning, I probably would need to like set up all of my exercise clothes, like very close to my bed and have it all set up. And I probably would need to have decided what exactly I'm gonna do and maybe have some kind of music or playlist that I play as soon as I get up so that I can be like, oh yeah. And I might even need to put my big why in the mirror to remind me about why I'm doing this so that I can put on my clothes and then go do the thing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if I don't do those things, I'm going to come up with all kinds of good excuses about why not. Right? And so again, it's just kind of knowing yourself and then saying, how am I going to set myself up to be successful? Okay, so we're going to come back. So you're going to write these down and send them to me. And then I want you guys checking in with each other. Do you see what I'm saying about how you're doing? Because otherwise this doesn't work unless you check in. Danielle.
One of mine was to be more assertive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic goal. Mm-hmm.
A habit. One of my habits was to communicate how I feel at the time I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, I don't know about that.
You're challenging yourself. That's a good stretch habit. Great.
What I want to feel is comfortable.
Uh-huh.
Which is probably not going to happen. Following that, what I'll tell myself when I get discouraged is that doing something that makes me feel uncomfortable will pay off.
Great.
In the long run at some point in time.
So what's the big one? Because that's probably really important for you at this juncture.
Well, these big whys. Well, I don't know which one really fits into this, but like spending time with Evelyn, that like re-energizes me, you know, I was looking at that. But I guess not including those, like the reason I want to do that is just so that I maybe feel like
less anxious, less overworked,
Yeah.
and more satisfied
Like,
with your
I'm
life.
not holding things anymore. You know, I can focus on something else without like being bogged down with feelings or emotions that like really are eating up whatever else I should be spending energy on.
Dave and Kais, I hope you're listening to what Danielle's saying, because this probably would relate to you as well. And it might be a goal that you might want to consider, right? If you're not asking for help and not being assertive. So again, realizing like there's a bigger reason why that is. It's going to lead to you feeling better, to having more support and probably more harmony in your relationships, because people are not going to try to be reading your mind and or waiting until they're having to be stepping over eggshells. Right? Okay. Kyler.
Be more present at home.
Okay.
So whether it's just when it's the two of us or my time with Evelyn, that we're not talking about work, that we're just kind of enjoying each other's company, and that it doesn't feel like she knows how I'll get. There's a mess over there, so I need to go clean that before I can actually be present in this conversation or my time with her. Or so it's almost like I can only focus on that time once all that other stuff is done. And getting to a point where understanding that that stuff really isn't that important, and that can be done when all that other stuff that's much more important you've already experienced that.
That's good to do it at 10 o'clock at night.
Well, that's when we're going to bed and everyone's long in bed.
Yeah.
So getting home from work and spending time with her, and not then going over here and spending 10 minutes and then going over here and doing this, or the two of us start talking about work. And so maybe then for us setting maybe a hour window that, hey, this is the only time we can talk about work, or we can only talk about work when we're at work. And it's hard for us because if something happens in my day, generally she'll know about it, and so then we get home and talk about it. Where when you don't work with the person, she'll only know, or he'll only know when you present it to him.
It's tricky for me. It's not even talking, it's thinking about work. So then you're playing with your kids when I
Right.
stuff, but you're thinking. But
Correct.
life is so much more enjoyable if you can be present.
Correct.
I haven't figured that out, so I don't have the answer.
Life is very short.
Yeah.
And kids grow up really fast, even though right now it feels like an eternity. You know, pretty soon she's gonna not be a baby, right? And so I don't know what your big why is, but if you think about it from that perspective, like there's only a short window of time of Evelyn being a baby. There's only a short window of time of, right? So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Figure out a way to disengage from that work, because I think it would benefit me.
However, the piece about working together and potentially even having so my partner and I, you know, sometimes we need to talk about work more, and we're doing a lot, and sometimes we just set, like, we started with setting timers, and so we were like, not more than an hour, and then we can hash things out and then be done. So this might help you. I don't know. It's just an image that has helped me. So if I think about all the stuff that's going on in my life as a cabinet that has all those different drawers, if you have one of those tall cabinets and you have 3 drawers at a time open, that cabinet's going to topple over. Okay, and so then whatever it is that you're working on, like, you need to shut the drawer and only have 1 drawer open at a time. And so I often, when I notice, you know, I'm thinking about, like, okay, my cabinet is going to be toppling over if I have too many things open on my desktop, so I need to close these drawers and just be in the moment with this person, with this thing, with whatever, right? So what's the bigger why?
I don't have one.
Okay, so think of something that feels, again, really important, right? Because, and that's what I'm connecting it, because that's what the other piece is going to motivate you. I'm doing this because, right? It's going to lead to better relationships. It's going to lead to more enjoyment. It's going to lead to me being a better parent, whatever that is. Kais,
Yes.
do you want to tell us one of your, oh, sorry, you don't have the sheet. So you've been listening. So from what you've been listening, is there something that resonates for you that you think, oh, that's something that I would like to work on?
Sometimes, yeah, I feel like I need to work on myself.
Yes.
In what way?
Something.
He's like, you're asking me way too many personal questions, dude. But they're all sharing pretty personal things. So
Yeah,
is there something that they shared that for you like resonate and you're like, yeah, I need to work on this more?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, working on myself and let's say sometimes I feel like, I mean, yeah, you know what, I need to give more time to my family.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, given what your team has shared, might be volunteering to save your team less. They're all giving me the dirty looks, but it might be that you take on less things just to try to save them. And then you carve out time for you.
That's exactly, I mean, kind of, to me, sometimes I feel it's like kind of, long-term plan. So, taking things, taking less things, let's say, just like, I mean, that means, or to me, for example, when I say, okay, I want to take less, but at the same time, I need to make sure that whatever I'm giving away is done perfectly.
Right.
So
they will ask you when they really need you, okay? But then you're going to work on saying, oh, I'll just take care of it a lot less. Does that make sense?
Say it again, please.
Because you save them. You just volunteer to do work so that there's less conflict. Do you see what I'm saying? And then you just...
Yeah, okay. I do volunteer, it's maybe it's a nice word from Danielle sometimes to say, like, I mean, I volunteer, but majority of the work, I feel like, I mean, yeah, this needs to be done from our side, let's say.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
yeah.
So just, maybe it's just reflecting a little bit more before you speak up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And say, okay, is this something that needs to be done from our side, or is this something that, can be handled by somebody else before you jump in? Does that make sense?
I think that you can do a sense of wanting it done perfectly.
Yeah.
And when he does it, he can control
Correct.
the quality of that work.
Yes.
When it's delegated to someone else, you lose control of how good it's going to get done, if it's going to get done on time, all of those things.
Right.
Well, the truth of the matter is, me being the oldest here, most of the time it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Most of the time it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do all these things. Just because if we had to do everything, for instance, in the old days, my brother would ask for every report. Did you really need those reports? But if you want to please him and do all that, then you can be overwhelmed, overworked, especially if you don't delegate. It's hard for people to delegate, right? And for me, I've learned to be able to do that over time, but it's not easy. Once you learn it, you really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Kais, he's in that stage where he's got so much to do. He's going to learn. He's going to have to learn how to delegate, figure out what's important, what's not important, push some stuff off his plate.
Yes. This is being recorded, by the way, and he said he does not need things to be done perfectly. So this is really good.
That's okay.
He'll become a better employee. This is coming from a guy who doesn't get it. But he'll become a much better employee if he does spend more time with Susu and his son, truthfully.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Let me say this. Okay. Maybe this is something that I learned from my father. Let's say. Okay. So it's kind of impossible to get things done 100% perfectly as you wish. But if you target to get it done perfectly, then you will get it done, let's say, excellent, okay? But if you target to get it done, let's say, good, you might not get it even, okay. So yeah, that's something that I really believe in. So I always target to get it done perfectly. So at least, I am, I get it done, let's say, really good.
Yeah.
And again, I gonna know, maybe it's not, for Mike, it might be, I've been working with Mike, let's say 5 years so far, okay? And during that time, we built, let's say, a department, has over 16 employees from zero. So no one there, no one, 0 employees. So you may imagine, the work that we had to complete, and at the same time, the people that we need to train, and at the same time that the people that we need to hand over to. And again, I need to make sure that they are doing the work 100% perfect. So I am, I have to, let's say, spend as much as possible this time in whatever they do.
And I love that you said this, because that basically articulated all of the beliefs that you are holding, right? That are keeping you hostage working in the way that you are.
Yes.
That's exactly what you just said. I've learned from my dad. It's been passed on. This is what I really believe. And that's what keeps you feeling so overworked and not having more time for yourself and your family. Yeah. So you being willing to perhaps challenge some of those beliefs, or begin to maybe create a different belief system about perhaps if I train my people, they can learn how to do it very well and do an excellent job. And I can have also more time for myself.
Yes.
And as Mike said, you probably will be a better, a better leader and a better manager, because you're going to feel better. You're going to have more space in your mind to actually be more creative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To me, the way I view it is this: for all of us, I don't, but for Kais, certainly maybe he's a good example. Is, he's a part of this group because I hope he becomes a great thinker.
Yeah.
Not a great doer. In the end, the same thing goes for maybe Connor with being perfectly organized.
Yes.
It's not because he's perfectly organized that he's a part of this group. It's because he's smart and he's going to think how to get to the next step. Because in the end, those things, I know it's who we are, but they bring so less value than the next piece. So for Kais, his value is in thinking about how do we get this company from A to B, for instance, through ways in which we can play with our cash, through, hey, you got to watch your margins, through, hey, did we ever think about doing this or that, rather than say your income statement's on time on the 20th. And by the way, it balances to the penny, right? Like they always say, I always say about the accountant, the joke, right? They say, hey, you had a great year. Really, we had a great year. Yeah, you lost 20,000, but it balances to the penny. Do we care if it balances to the penny if we lost 20,000? Right? So you're caught in these details, and not thinking about where to go in the big picture. And really, the people underneath you should be worried about those details. I'm not saying we don't want to balance to the penny, so don't worry about that, guys. But you shouldn't have to worry about that so much. Anyways, that's my thought.
Awesome. So does that make sense, guys? And I love that, Mike, that you say this, because ultimately I love it is about learning how to develop the way that you think. That is what's going to develop your company. It's what's going to develop your life. Having habits that support you and continuing that expansion is important, but you don't want to be caught doing all the stuff. Right? And so what Mike is trying to teach you is that in order for you to be a great leader, you need to learn to ask for help. You need to be assertive. You need to delegate. You need to let go of the worries and not get caught up in all the details, and then keep looking and thinking forward, like regardless of what's showing up in the moment, because that's the thing that's actually going to help you move forward and bounce back. Whether what's showing up in the moment is a major disaster or like a fantastic contract, right? Like it's how do we learn from what's happening and then translate into moving forward in a positive way, and how do we grow from this experience? But if we get caught in the experience, then everything gets strained. Does that make sense? So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
For me, the other thing I just wanted to maybe add is I need to train, and maybe this goes to everyone else, but I need to like train myself to understand that thinking is actually working.
Say more about what that means to you.
So like for me, I feel like I need to be doing something, getting organized, sending emails, getting tasks done, whatever.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
You know what I mean? Yes. So like my work day, if I'm not
doing
something and I'm just doing whatever it is that allows me to think and clear my head and look into the future, it feels like I'm slacking almost. Like I'm not doing my job and I'm, cheating the company. Which the biggest thing I could be doing probably is exactly that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Think about for your case a little bit, just like you said, but if you said to me, okay, or said to Danielle, hey, I've organized myself, I got my quotes out, I've done this, I got all this done. But did you think about who do we acquire next, right? What technology do we go after? How do we grow into this market, right? Which one now do you think is more valuable long term? Short term today, okay, maybe your tests are more important, but really are they? Right? And let's say you don't get them done. Let's say you're not perfectly organized. What happens? Does the company go away? People pick up the ball. Yeah, we might drop the ball sometimes, but somebody's going to pick up the ball. Same thing with you, Jeremy, right? You're so task oriented. Hey, look, I got Apex. I got this photo done. I got this. But are you thinking the big picture? How do I take the amount of leads we're generating and quadruple it? That's how you make a difference.
Like how do we turn those leads into customers rather than just the leads?
How do I build the brand from nobody knowing us to be in this? Think outside the box instead of, I did this email, I did this, right? But that's what you do, right? Mm-hmm. You're caught in that. Building your team, as Kais did. Mm-hmm. Kais did a really good job at building that team. Mm-hmm. Maybe overly involved today, but he did a really good job. Everybody does this. I do it too.
Oh yeah, we all do.
Don't think I don't do it. I have these same problems, right? On my list, I'm the president of 5 companies. On my list, fix FCT greeter, right? Should I be doing that?
No.
Maybe I say, hey, this is how we do it. That's where we're at today, maybe. But if I'm spending a lot of time doing the details of I got to get rid of obsolete products, that's not where I should spend my time. I should be thinking of how do we make really this great place, right? If that makes sense, right? Yeah. And we're all caught in that, and that's the point. We have to get out of those. If you're a part of this group, and there'll be people underneath your group, you each will eventually have your own groups.
Totally.
You have to think. Thinking is so much more powerful than doing, in my opinion.
Can I have 20 more minutes?
What time is it?
5:30.
5:35.
Oh, okay.
Yes?
I'm good with that.
Who's watching the
I'm just Dave.
Yeah.
Your turn. You've been so patiently waiting.
I'm going to say close a large volume customer for the product that I'm tasked with selling. And I think to accomplish that, the habit would be to gain more clarity and figure out and do what is essential to accomplish that instead of being scattered. And that might point back to asking for more help.
Okay.
Meditating, perhaps. I don't meditate. Maybe meditating in the morning would help to get more focused, gain some clarity. Mm-hmm. And then what I'd want to feel pride in accomplishing that goal.
Great. The big why?
I don't I would say to be successful.
Okay. So how does that translate to you? Like why does that matter to you? So
I feel like I'm bringing value to the organization.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
So that tells me that maybe there's a piece about wanting recognition.
Sure.
Okay. So, so this is important because in some ways it's part of because even if you were to say being successful means I make more money, okay, which sometimes we're afraid of saying. But usually money is not the end all be all, right? So if you think about why do you want more money? Well, I want more money so that I can buy more things, have better experiences, take care of my kids, have more safety. You see what I'm saying? So ultimately, when we think about success, that's it's only a means to an end, right? So you're seeking something more, right? So when you ask the question to Mike, ultimately his answer, why he said there's no, his real answer is two things: legacy and freedom. That's what he's after, right? There's all of these other things, right? But in the end, that's the bigger why, right? So I guess that's what I want you to connect to. Dave, what's the thing that just feels so important to you in you making this happen?
I'm having a tough time with that. I don't know.
So, because I think that bringing value is important, right? But it's not about you. Does that make sense? Maybe it's feeling a sense of proving to myself that I'm capable of doing something like that.
Yeah, sure. A sense of accomplishment. See, this is a kind of a startup division. So it's been hard to gain any traction with the product.
Okay. Fair enough. So do you see what I'm saying? So again, having that be something that feels meaningful and powerful, and each of you might need to refine it, but I'm asking it because I think that's part of what really matters.
I am actually going to go.
Okay.
She goes to bed in an hour, and I'm leaving for Japan tomorrow. For a week,
yes,
so.
Of course. Yeah, I understand.
Yep.
So we'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good.
I'm going to skip over these things because we kind of went through that with your thing. I want to kind of at least bring start the conversation for all of you guys, and then you can kind of start thinking about this stuff, right? Because in some ways it relates to, this is the big why. It's kind of like that vision and mission statements. So part of why this is important is that it helps us all to have some alignment, right? When you have that clear vision about why we're doing something, then we can all be on the boat together being really excited about it, versus I just want to do this, I just want to do this. Does that make sense? So some of the stuff that you guys talked about, it's important because some of them were kind of combined, business and personal, okay, which it's important. This is a lot more about as your company, what you stand for and where you're going, right? So again, this is helping us have more motivation, be more invested, have a little bit more defined responsibilities. And if you can find a way to link compensation to performance, then it really makes a huge impact in keeping your employees fired up, because now it's not just about achieving this big mission that you all are standing for, but now they have the possibility of earning extra income that is now a tangible compensation that is linked to performance. So that tends to be powerful for people. So a mission statement usually will convey the purpose of your organization and the value that you add through your products and services. So Jeremy, this will be really important for you, because you having lots of clarity about this will allow you and your marketing team to do a much better job at promoting their products. Does that make sense? So I'm going to give you some examples. So I just picked 3 companies that are pretty, typical. Like, so Uber, their mission statement is to make transportation as reliable as running water everywhere for everyone. Okay, mission statements are usually short. Google, to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And you can see how these mission statements really kind of make sense given what they do. Starbucks, I really like this, to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. Now this is kind of interesting because Mike, you had asked me, well, how would I know? Sometimes you can even tell temperament. Like whoever's leading Starbucks is an idealist, right? Because in like even the language that they've used, it's very much that aspirational. And so it's just kind of interesting, okay? So what is yours? What is your mission statement?
We have
personal.
Yeah, we have multiple mission statements from a company standpoint, right?
Okay, yeah.
So each company, and I don't even know what some of the company mission statements are now, but
We've never probably written.
Yeah, it's
We
probably
have-
a good
no, we-
project for at least like water.
Yeah, we do have some mission statements, but maybe not from water. But from some of the older ones, like Blue Ring Stencil has a mission statement. In fact, I just read it about a month ago. But giving back to, being a successful business to offer profit to the ownership and offer incentive and jobs for their employees. Something like this.
So this might be a good time to kind of look back and pull them out, because a lot of times, like we write them as CEOs when we start,
Yeah.
and then we grow a company, and then they get to be in a dust drawer, and then very people.
We've tweaked them, but they're not so much mission statements as more of just like about us.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not like that.
No, it's not powerful at all. It's more just what we do and not who we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so good. This is great. So a lot of times we struggle with this. So here's a few things. So if you're struggling and you want to start kind of revamping and recreating with these mission statements, so you can start by looking at what is it that you do, where do you operate. So some of these things may be important and some of them may not. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who do you serve? Why do you do what you do? The why may be more powerful because the whys are usually more aspirational and inspirational. What are your values? And then really thinking about that whatever you write is not actually limiting you in how you're going to grow in the next 5 or 10 years. Right? And then that you want to think about, what is it a statement that is actually going to move and inspire your entire company to be like, oh my God, yes, that's awesome. I can get behind this company because we're doing this thing, right? And that they feel like inspired to do. So if I go back to this, you realize that neither of these 3 companies actually created a mission statement that was limiting. Okay, and in some ways, like Google, for instance, they said the world's information. So they whether they created this when they were starting or they tweaked it after, I have no idea, right? But Google didn't start being as powerful as what Google is now, right? But if that was their mission, right, they've done a good job, right? And so you want to make sure that whatever you write is not limiting to just where you're at, okay? And this is, again, kind of highlighting what you were saying, why it's so important that you're thinking, right? So, and thinking might be that you go for a walk and you're thinking might be that you actually like sit down and start writing stuff or start drawing stuff, or, right? Because we process in different ways. Connor, it might be that you need to go and sit down and talk, right? You're an extrovert, you're an external processor. So you might need to say like, hey, like, Mike, can I talk to you for a moment? Hey, like whoever is like, here's some ideas that like, let me talk through some of this stuff, because that might be the way that, you know, sometimes I just talk into my phone and record. Okay. And that might be what you do. And then you listen, and then that helps you be like, oh, it was right in front of me. I didn't get it. So other ways that you might want to think about it is kind of reflecting back to your CBIs, what showed up as most important for you, and then core values that you have decided. So I'm going to give you kind of a little example. It's not comprehensive, okay, but these are just some examples of values. And so I know that we're not going to do this all and finish it all. So, however, maybe I want you to be looking at this and maybe thinking and having some conversations, and then we can come back when we come back in February. Think about like, what are these values that you have as a company that you want to make sure that you present and embody? Okay, one suggestion that I might have given your CVIs might be innovation. You have a strong innovation part that showed up for all of you, most of you in your CVI. So that might be something that becomes one of your core values. Family may be one of those core values. Do you see what I'm saying? And so really, and the way that I normally like to do this exercise is that you pick at least 10, sometimes 12, and then you start taking away so that you end up with a list of 6 or 8. You don't want to have more than that, because then it's really overwhelming to convey. The shorter the list, the easier it is to remember, the easier it is to convey. You see what I'm saying? And so the easier it is to then share. Now, it doesn't mean that all of these values are going to be articulated in a mission statement, but when you get clear about what these are, then it might make it really easy for you to talk about that mission statement. And then eventually, when we talk about the vision statement, it's like, where do we want to go, right? And so that's the 2 pieces, but they need to work in tandem, right? So we need to have the one that feels clear and that we all connect. And my guess is that as you guys think through this and go through this process and share it with your teams, that the idea is that then they get excited and then they get inspired and they're like, oh, I didn't know that this is what we said. Yes, like we want to stand for this. How do we make this happen in a more tangible way? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the homework, just to be clear, is I want you to look through this. I want you to complete your goal worksheets. Email them to me. I think that would be helpful, because then I get to see what you're working on. Yeah, but not here. I will email it to you.
A lot of value out of redoing it.
Yes, yeah. I'll email a blank one to you.
Okay.
Because I need to email one to Kais. So does that sound good?
Yeah.
And then for you to kind of start thinking. So might be helpful for all of you to start actually picking your own personal values, because it's usually helpful for each of us to have a personal mission statement, like about like your life and what you stand for and that kind of thing. So it might be really helpful for you to pick your own personal values first, right? And say, these are the things, and usually I think about values that like, these are the things that are really important to me in my life. I wouldn't want to be without them. And then you can kind of extend to thinking about what does our company stand for, that I think are important values I would want to include.
Or maybe even a division or a group, like the marketing group. This is their mission statement.
Right.
It
Correct.
doesn't have to be the company, because you work for 4 or 5 companies.
Right. So, and some of them might filter. So it might be that you have several mission statements under. So if you have a umbrella, like mother company, right? That will have a mission statement that might be more broad, and then the kid companies are going to have maybe their own mission statement that might be a offshoot of that main mission
Right.
statement, but that it's definitely in alignment with it.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Yeah.
So let's do a really quick 2-word check-in. Check out.
I'll go first.
Right.
I'm relaxed. Well, I'm going to Japan tomorrow. I usually am not relaxed.
That's great.
But I'm
Good news.
relaxed. That's only because I got done with all my work, and I'm happy still.
Great. Fabulous. Connor.
I would say thoughtful
Mhm.
and relaxed.
Great.
Truthfully, uneasy.
Mhm.
Excited.
Okay. And uneasy about the personal stuff? Or
maybe both.
okay. Okay. Kind of trying to figure out how this is all going to fit in.
Yeah.
Okay. Danielle?
I would say reflective
Uh-huh.
and energetic.
Great. Guys?
I would say kind of again happy.
Great.
And I would say curious.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave?
Oh, that was mine. Curious and curious and calm.
Great. Thank you. So you all did a fantastic job. I will email these things. I'm also going to email the evaluations just because I forgot to print them so that you can do that. It's just helpful for me to keep having feedback about what each of these things are.
When's the next meeting for the group?
February 1st, I think is what we
February
had
1st, yeah.
set.
Yeah, I'm working to see if we can move it up
Yeah, I'll be in San Diego still.
to the, I mean,
Yeah,
Like
I'll
the
be.
24th.
to the 24th through 25th.
Yeah, I think that works for me. That's the one we have.
Yeah, so I can do either. So
Yeah.
you just let me know, and then I will.
Yeah.
And then those of you that are joining us virtually, I will keep the links the same. So just hold on to that link so that you just use the same link. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Can you do me a favor, Danielle, and email me the notes from today or the presentation
Yeah,
slideshow?
I will email that to you as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It was lovely seeing
Thanks.
you all. Have a good
Thanks.
one. Have a good
All
night.
right, see you.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks, Elena.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
And